This is the concierge, sir.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Concierge Confidential. I'm your host, Brian Ortega, and in today's episode, we're going to be diving into those impossible reservations and what to do if you couldn't get in to that hard-to-get spot in Las Vegas. So I'm actually going to be doing where we're going to switch. So basically, we're going to present a restaurant in Las Vegas that's typically hard to get a reservation for, and what is a good backup to go to get that similar experience to what you're looking for. This isn't just trying to say, hey, I couldn't get into this steakhouse. What is like another great steakhouse in? That would be a little bit easier. It's actually the way that I'm doing it. I want to give you that same sort of feel that restaurant would have given you in a different setting, which is sometimes a little bit more attainable than other restaurants, or certain restaurants in Las Vegas. So this doesn't mean that you can walk into these places, although some of them you can. This is really going to be, I couldn't get into this place when I was making a reservation, 2 or 3 months ago. I have 2 or 1 month left, maybe a couple weeks. Where can I make a reservation for? So I'm really excited to jump into this episode. So we're going to doing the alternate restaurant episode right now. Okay, guys, so I don't know really how I came up with this idea. I don't really know where I came up with this idea from, but it just hit me, and I was like, this is a really fun idea as an episode. So we got a couple restaurants that I sort of picked from, my basic knowledge, from my knowledge of the Las Vegas Strip, and we're going to try to keep the places somewhat similar. Like, you can't just say, hey, I couldn't get into Golden Steer, so I want to go to, Nico's at Durango, which, honestly, is not even in the same category, but something that you would think of the Strip or Fremont Street, places that you would go if you're here in Las Vegas. And I know a lot of people who are listening to this that are from Las Vegas have their places they like to go to. But again, this is for people that are visiting and might want to have a second option just in case they couldn't get into these hard to get restaurants. So we are going to start with the number one top tier on the list. Not saying that's the greatest thing on the list, but saying that it is one of the hardest restaurants to make a reservation for. And one of the places that I actually would have trouble getting into because I don't go there that often, so I don't know any of the hostesses, I don't know any of the bartenders, and that's really one of the ways to sort of get your way into some of these places. And the number one on the list is Golden Steer. Golden Steer is by far one of the hardest places to get a reservation for, and honestly, one of the hardest places to walk in and just, because once you get to Golden Steer, you can't really go anywhere else. You're kind of stuck at that location. It's in a strip mall, essentially a couple steps away from Sahara, the hotel. And you can also go to the Stratosphere, but no one really is going to those hotels for many of the restaurants. Although a lot of people are really excited for Sahara opening. Chef Kwame from Top Chef's. One of his restaurants is opening there, which I believe is going to be doing Caribbean cuisine, which I think Caribbean cuisine is quite underutilized in Las Vegas, which lots of foodies will tell you, oh my goodness, it's a travesty. Not sure, I think I've had Caribbean cuisine once, and it wasn't even a top tier restaurant. I think it was Bahama Breeze, to be honest. So people are very excited about that. But getting back to Golden Steer is really one of the hardest places to make a reservation for. So I actually, while I'm doing this episode of Golden Steer, I'm actually typing into Google right now, and I'm going to see what I can get for 2 people at a 7 o'clock reservation. So let's go ahead and click on it. And then the reason this place has become so popular was that it was the reason it is popular, for those of you unaware, is that Golden Steer was historically known as one of the still around hangouts for the Rat Pack and many other big celebrities like Elvis Presley. You could even say Marilyn Monroe. Although I don't even think they say they actually have a booth for her, but I'm not sure because the history on the Golden Steer is actually kind of funny. So it does say that it's been open since 1958. So I think there's actually been some deep dives into if that's the actual date that it opened, but it's fine. We'll go with it, and we'll let them say that's 1958. So anyways, getting back into it. So Golden Steer. Golden Steer usually serves things tableside. It's very old school Vegas. They have waiters that have been there, for the past, 15, 20 years, which is actually interesting because you find that a lot of old school places like this, like Golden Steer, have waiters and waitresses that have been working there for a long time. I went to Musso, which is, I think, a very Vegas thing. I ended up going to Musso and Frank's in Los Angeles on Hollywood Boulevard. Super famous old school steakhouse. It's really ingrained in the city of of Los Angeles, of being that old school spot, and people still line up and want to go to it to this day. It's actually not too hard to get a reservation at Musso and Frank's. A lot of famous movies were filmed there. It was Ocean's 11 was filmed there recently. The show The Studio had a couple scenes in there, which said they were open for lunch, which they are not open for lunch, but although I could be wrong. And then also, I was going to say, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, famously, that is where the Al Pacino meets Leonardo DiCaprio. If you park at the valet, it feels, you go through the back, where the kitchen is. It's pretty sick. Anyways, I asked a waiter there. I was like, how long have you been working here? Thinking it's going to be a long time, 20 years. And they're like, oh yeah, I've been here for 2 years. And it's oh man, that really wasn't part of the fun. But you'll go into Golden Steer and you'll find older waiters that have been there for 30 years, and they know how to spin the salad and then do all the tableside presentations. And that is really what you're going to Golden Steer for. The reason you go to Golden Steer is for the experience. Before it hit a lot of. Before it got super popular due to all the TikToks and Instagram that went, viral, you were able to get into Golden Steer, a couple weeks out, maybe a month out. And I was able to go in, and this was right before the blow up. And I went with my mom, and we sat at, I think, Peter Lawford's table. It wasn't a big person. It wasn't Dean Martin or Frank Sinatra, which every booth has a name on it. So I kind of talked about this a while back of I was excited that we went to Oscars and they had Robert De Niro and Sharon Stone in that, that booth. There's only one of those. When you go to Golden Steer, every single one has one, and you're just hoping that you're in a famous person's one. They've recently expanded Golden Steer because it is so popular, and they even have, I think, Golden Steer in New York. So that really shows how popular this place has been. And it usually doesn't go that way. You usually get people going from New York and then opening a Las Vegas location. So it's quite rare. So they use OpenTable. So there's two major reservation systems that you use for Las Vegas. You usually use OpenTable, and then much newer and much more prominent in a lot of properties is 7 Rooms. 7 Rooms is quite popular. So let's just go ahead and look for 2 people. Let's do June. We go to June. So yeah, in June, again, even when you get to June and July, 9 p.m. is the latest. If I put 7 o'clock, 9 p.m. is the best reservation time that they have. Oh my goodness, they have a Wednesday at 8 o'clock. I'm just saying. So let's see how close we can get. So we're in February right now. Let's look in April to see what we can get. That's a couple months away. Nothing available at the moment. Let's look still in April. Now let's look in May. Still nothing. And June. June is the one that has some of the best availability. And let's get to July. And then July, same thing. So Wednesdays is the best day. Not even a good Wednesday. Oh boy. So your best bet for 2 people. Let's do a 3 people. Let's do a 3 top, because that's going to get you a booth. Yeah, so I'm looking at it now. So, if you go with a party of 3 people, a little bit more availability at those times. So, this is kind of a thing about a lot of places that have, booths, is that it's actually easier to book when you have 3 to 4 people. 2 tops, really tough to seat. Because they really don't want you guys there at that time. So it looks like if you guys are planning on coming to Vegas, that June and July, this is February, would be the best time at the earliest of your convenience to be able to visit Vegas and go to Golden Steer. So let's look at it. So February is 2. So March, April, May, June. So that would basically get you 4 or 5 months out is the soonest you can get into Golden Steer, which I know it's not fun to have to think that far ahead. So with that being said, Golden Steer, very hard reservation to get. You can get there early, which a lot of people do. There's typically a line out the door. There's a lot of homeless people that will probably come and try to take your money. Not take your money, but ask you for money, because that's exactly in the area of town that you are. But the reason you are there is for that reason. But again, you are going there for the experience. I thought the steak was just fine. They usually give you all these options. You can do a la carte. You can do a like surf and turf option, which usually you can do crab legs or a big giant steak, or you could do steak and a lobster. When we went, we did steak and lobster, which is the surf and turf option. It ends up coming out to around $260 a person if you do that. That's like for the entire thing. It's like, oh, or you can do this thing. So that's about $260 for that entire option. If you end up doing that choice where you get the surf and turf, the large version, that is what I recommend. I did the math like in my head as I was doing it when I was there, and I was like, well, it ends up coming out to almost the same thing if we just got like, one steak and it went from there. So it ends up being a much more affordable option if you just end up getting the big meal and then sharing it. It does come with soup and salad. So it does come for soup and salad for soup or salad for everybody at the table. Bread, obviously, and then, of course, you can get a dessert at the end that is extra added on, but it is very much a whole experience. They do seat for you do sit there for a very long time, but it is part of the fun. So I keep sort of reviewing Golden Steer, but really what I'm here for is to tell you the options that you would get instead of Golden Steer. So let's just say you try to make a reservation at Golden Steer, can't get in. What do you do instead? The two options that I would recommend, I just did this, so this could be recency bias, but Oscar's Steakhouse, I think, is great for giving you that old school Vegas feel. There are plenty of other old school places in town that are like old school Vegas. People would say like Piero's. People would also say places like Andiamo, which is at the D. They would say, oh my goodness, the Cellar, which is the steakhouse inside of the Fremont, but those don't have the same like pizzazz that I'm thinking of when I think old school Vegas steakhouse. So I think that Oscar's would certainly fit the bill in being something that is iconic, that has been in films and television, but also has that old school Vegas feel to it. And after going to it, it very much felt very similar to what they do at Golden Steer. Everything is presented in a wonderful way. The booths are a real staple, and I think that Oscar Steakhouse accomplishes that magnificently. Peter Luger's, I know, is kind of an interesting choice because Peter Luger's is a newer restaurant in Las Vegas, but in New York, for those of you that are aware of like sort of the scene, it's been there for over 100 years in Brooklyn, and famously, it's one of those places that doesn't take credit card, at least the last time I checked, which is very interesting. You could have to buy their gift certificates, but when they do the service in Las Vegas, it's very similar to what they do in New York. Obviously, I think the flair of Vegas comes out in the waiters and waitresses there, because very similar to the ones at the Golden Steer, Peter Luger's in New York, I've heard the waiters and waitresses are very quintessential New York, if you know what I mean. That's kind of what I wanted that. Like when I went to Peter Luger's, very similar. They do the meat where they have it sizzling at the table. That's the way that you have to get it. They have very interesting sides, which I was not a fan of a couple of the sides because it was just something that I wasn't accustomed to. Very East Coast steakhouse. The big tomatoes, the schlag, which was great. It's basically just very, very heavy whipped cream. Essentially like ice cream. That was cool. They really love their steak sauce. Big chunks of big huge pieces of bacon. I've had their burger, which my dad really wants to have their burger. Their burger is fine. I think it's just okay. A lot of people say it's like one of the best burgers in the city. I don't know if I'd call it that. But Peter Luger's delivers on that old school feel that you would get from like a Golden Steer, essentially, that old school steakhouse, from the 1950s or 1940s, which is very cool. And it's doable. You can definitely when I say doable, it's definitely some place that you're able to make a reservation for sure. So again, those are my two options. If you can't get into Golden Steer, Oscar Steakhouse and Peter Luger, you're still going to get that old school classic era, Vegas feel to it. Well, obviously, Luger's is New York. So let's go ahead and move on, because I know I kind of spent a lot of time on Golden Steer, and I apologize for that. I just kind of got off into another land. So let's go to another place that is very popular. Probably one of the other most popular places and hardest places to get a reservation for is Hell's Kitchen. Hell's Kitchen, which is a Gordon Ramsay restaurant. If you've ever been to Las Vegas, especially in the last 2 years, you've noticed that Gordon Ramsay has really taken off and grown his empire significantly in the city. He only really had like 1 or 2 restaurants, or maybe 3 restaurants at a time. And now he's really put his stamp on any property that has the name Caesars attached to it. So Caesars owns a very big chunk of properties in Las Vegas. So it's important. Caesar's Palace, like their whole their sort of brand is that they have all the celebrity chefs, especially the very big ones, the ones that are very, very well known. So things like Gordon Ramsay, Giada. Giada only has really like 2 restaurants in Las Vegas. Bobby Flay has many restaurants in town, specifically at Caesar's properties, and they also have Chef Nobu, which Nobu has one of his flagship restaurants is inside of Caesar's Palace. It's been there for a very long time, which that will show up later on the list. So these definitely fill the mold of a celebrity chef restaurant, essentially. But they're very good. The restaurants are quite good. But Hell's Kitchen, hard to get in. It obviously bears the name of his TV show, which everybody wants to go inside and eat the beef Wellington. I have another tip for everybody here. If you just want to go to a Gordon Ramsay restaurant to have beef Wellington, you can literally go to any of his restaurants that are not the fish and chip place or the burger joint and have a beef Wellington. It's on all of his menus. It's a signature. But let's just say you still want to have the same level of service that they have at Hell's Kitchen. One, you can go to Hell's Kitchen for lunch, which they do serve that on the menu. I believe it's a half size, by the way. If you go for the beef Wellington at lunchtime, it is a half portion instead of a full portion of beef Wellington. But you are able to go for lunch. And I always say it's like a hard reservation. Everyone's like, well, I got there at 3:45. It's like, yeah, that's the end of lunch or the beginning of dinner. It's the time that nobody actually wants to eat food because you're going to be hungry again. But let's just say you want to have the same atmosphere as Hell's Kitchen, which is fine dining. A really good option to go to is one of his first restaurants in Las Vegas, and that is Gordon Ramsay Steak, which that is located at the Paris Hotel. It's a beautiful restaurant on the inside that has a wonderful sculpture of his movement with a knife, which is above the ceiling, which is very confusing unless you know that. But it still delivers on the very high level experience you're hoping for, but it's a much easier reservation to get into than, say, Hell's Kitchen. Again, I would still recommend making a reservation way in advance. I would say up to at least, a month or 2 is very helpful, especially if you're going like on a Friday or Saturday. The best dates to go for some of these places are off days. So usually like Wednesday or Thursday are really good days to go. A lot of places are usually closed on Monday. Monday is usually a day that most restaurants will be closed. And sometimes it's Sunday. But that is a really good option if you're not able to go to Hell's Kitchen. He does also have the Gordon Ramsay Bar and Grill, which I wouldn't say has the same sort of feel to it. People mostly just go there to either have the beef Wellington or fish and chips. And he also has burger, which is his burger joint. I don't think it's as good. And then he also has a restaurant at Harrah's, which just opened, which is supposed to be sort of like a mid-tier, sort of like a brasserie, which is sort of like open throughout the day. Mostly for dinner, though. Definitely mostly for dinner. I did love learning that the name brasserie just means restaurant that's open all day, which is, they can do anything. because it's like almost like a cafe, French cafe. Anyways, so that would be for Hell's Kitchen. I would recommend Gordon Ramsay steak as a very good option because you want the brand name of Gordon Ramsay. So sticking to brand names, I'm actually going to change up my list here a little bit. Let's talk about Nobu. Nobu is a very well-known sushi restaurant, fine dining sushi restaurant, and it is essentially an empire throughout the entire world. There's actually a great documentary on Chef Nobu and sort of his brand, and really like kind of how he came up with his concept of his restaurant, which has really done a good job of like delivering high quality cuisine, but not strictly sticking to sushi. He has a lot of Peruvian flavors and inspirations because that's actually where he got not his start, but he started in Japan and then he moved to South America where he lived in Peru, where he kind of discovered all these flavors and sort of mixed them with, Japanese sushi type of cuisine. And he moved around a lot, obviously trying to pick things from every different part of the world and then sort of settling in California and then really getting into that California flair of sushi, which is just very, very interesting. But Nobus are everywhere. Like I was in Coronado in San Diego, so Coronado Island, and I was at Hotel Del and they have a Nobu there. And it was very nice, very cool. Which is funny when you look at the logo. I always thought it always looks like a rhino, and it's actually just him behind the sushi bar. Anyways, so an option to go to other than Nobu, because Nobu at Caesar's Palace can be one of the hottest tickets to get into. It's a very popular place for people to have meetings. It's a very popular place for people to have really high-end dates. I've seen Chef Nobu, I think, like 2 or 3 times, which is kind of cool. There is an actual restaurant there's a hotel called the Nobu Hotel, which is connected to... What is it connected to? It's connected to the rest of Caesar's Palace, which is very interesting. But it's very hard to get in there sometimes. So if you're not able to get into Nobu at Caesar's Palace, there is also a Nobu at the Virgin Hotel, but nobody wants to go there. But it's not the same vibe. But you want to get to like a Nobu style restaurant, very high-end, chic, modern, cool. And one that comes into my mind is Wakuda. Wakuda, which is located at the Palazzo Hotel, really delivers on high-level cuisine. I've sat with people who I don't really like sushi, and they've told me this is the best sushi I've ever had multiple times. The service is impeccable. It's really great. It's very cool, very sleek, very sexy, lots of purple and white, which I love that color. And they have the Golden Ghee, which is a wonderful lounge that is separate, sort of to the same entrance, but it is separate from the rest of the restaurant. So it really feels like sort of on its own. But if you do want to go for like pre-show drinks or after gambling or after show cocktails, I love the Golden Ghee. They make great drinks. It's a fantastic lounge. Got DJ spinning records. But it is a beautiful space where the bartenders really know their stuff and they're able to sort of come up with these concoctions. They really understand their drinks, and I think they do a really fantastic job. I've also had the cuisine there that was, the non-sushi stuff. And I've had the rock shrimp, which is fantastic, which I know is, still seafood. But I've also had their teriyaki chicken is very good. They have wonderful pork there as well. It's so delicious. Oh my goodness. It's like their pork belly thing. It's so good. But their cuisine is really simple in terms of like the presentation, but very complex in terms of flavor. It's really, really tasty. So I really enjoy Wakuda. You can usually get a reservation, which is good because they have a very big room. And I think they really deliver on the style of what Nobu would try to deliver, but in their own little way. So I think it's very much a focus on... It's a really strong focus on the ingredients, and they do have lots of sushi options, nigiri, and rolls. They also do sashimi as well. Really high quality stuff. Really fantastic. They also have an omasake room, which is like sort of a speakeasy private room experience, other than just having like the sushi bar as well. The sushi bar at Nobu is very big. I have to say that the sushi bar at Wakuda is not as big as the one at is not as big as the one at Nobu. If that's something that you're really interested in, so just keep that in mind. Wakuda, you're definitely going to sit more at like an actual table setting for sure. So moving along, let's go and get this one in the middle here, just because it's in the middle. But Delilah's, I know I talk about it a lot, is one of the harder reservations to get in Las Vegas. You can make reservations, a couple months out. It shouldn't be too hard. Well, it actually is hard still. You do definitely have to know somebody to get a good reservation there. I would also recommend you go as a group. I do not recommend go there as a couple, because a lot of times if you go as a couple or two people, you do get seated either outside or at the bar downstairs, which when you're going like as a couple, you kind of don't want to sit at the bar. I sit at the bar all the time. I love sitting at the bar. I actually prefer it, but I'm by myself, so it's a very different experience. But when you do go with somebody, you do want to end up sitting like at an actual place. So let's go and just take a look. So let's try to reserve dinner. So by the way, brunch is usually able to reserve brunch. I've gone in there once during brunch, just to walk through. I didn't actually drink anything, and it wasn't like that busy. So I think they're still trying to get that one like really off the ground. But let's just go ahead and look forward. So let's go ahead and look into March. We'll do March like 20th, which is a Friday, for 2 people at 7 o'clock. Says there's no times available, so that's never good. Yeah, so like you'll see it. So like for 2 people, they will denote that it is bar seating for 2 people. And they have availability at 9:30, which is pretty late, honestly, for anybody. Or you could do a lot of Mondays, a lot of Wednesdays, a lot of Thursdays. They'll usually give you those dates that nobody really wants. But let's look at 4 people, because that's usually something a little bit more doable. So like that for a specific date, they do have availability, but not till like 11:30. And they also do denote patio seating, so that's nice. That's nice that they do that now. But again, yeah, just like shit times. It's like 10:30, 11. Nobody wants to eat at those times. That's like... we call that a bullshit time. Let's do a different date. Let's go to May. They don't let you book that far ahead. Let's look at April. Let's do April 10th. What's going on April 10th for 4 people? Yeah, still 10 p.m. Yeah, that sucks. What do I do at 5:30? Let's just do that. 5:30. Yeah, you're still getting shitty times. So as you can see, you could get a reservation, but it's going to be a really bad time, which is super late, and sometimes it's like late night bites. So let's just say you can get into Delilah's. Where are you going to go instead? So there are a couple options here. You're not going to get the same level that you're going to get anywhere else than you get at Delilah's, because I think it's just top tier, awesome, fantastic. But I haven't been there recently, but I have seen a lot on Instagram. From people who work there, is Mayfair Supper Club. Mayfair Supper Club is the obvious second choice to Delilah's, and I'm actually very comfortable saying it is a second choice compared to Delilah's, because Delilah's really delivers on being that classic 1960s Vegas vibe. You can feel the money in the room. You can feel people floating there. Models. Rich men, that very old school Vegas thing that you think about, like Goodfellas, essentially. If you ever seen the movie Goodfellas, there's a scene where they go to the Copacabana, and that there's people flying in seats for people that are famous. Kind of that's the vibe. So you're not going to match that. But a good secondary option would be Mayfair Supper Club. Right now, it's a little bit harder to get it in right now because they've changed their entertainment. They made a big deal about it. MGM Bellagio is really pushing it, but it is definitely a place that's going to match something of the vibe that you're trying to get from a Delilah's, for example. So Mayfair Supper Club is a good option. They have beautiful views. The cocktails are pretty good, as long as they're not made by a seniority bartender, meaning that a union bartender, because those guys suck. But Mayfair Supper Club would be your second option if you want dinner and a show in that case. So let's go ahead and move along here. We're actually to the last one. A couple notes here. I didn't do any that regarded Chinese food, because I think Chinese food is awesome in Vegas, and I think the only one that's kind of hard to get into is Din Tai Fung, which that is a very, very famous dim sum spot, but I couldn't find what's a good secondary option for dim sum. Actually, I do have a good second option. I mean, if you can't get into Din Tai Fung, which is at the Aria, which I've been told is definitely worth it. They do dim sum like nobody's business. Another good option is Mott 32. which is also at the Palazzo. They do Peking duck, which is delicious. I love the Peking duck. I recommend it. But they also have a really great dim sum selection. They're known for their hot and spicy dim sum, which is like more of like a soup, which people love it. I'm not a fan of soup, so I'm not a fan of that one. But they have great bao buns. They have really good pork belly, delicious. But they're really, really good. And I love Mott 32. And it's great for like parents. It's good for a date. It's good for a group outing, a girls' night. They also do brunch if you're into like a brunch thing. I think Mott 32 is a great alternative to Din Tai Fung if you're not able to get into there. There's also another one. Is it Wazuzu? I can't remember the name of the really expensive restaurant. It's right outside of Delilah's at the Wynn. But they have Red 8 is like the alternative, which is so good. It's nowhere like close to it in terms of like the type of high level type of cuisine, but I just love Red 8. One of my favorite late night bites, Red 8. Okay, let's get to my last one. And this is actually one where I think the replacement is actually better than the one that we're trying to get into, but let's talk about Carbone. So Carbone is located at the Aria, really small room, supposed to be high-level service, really famous name. They actually have multiple Carbones in like Miami, and then they have one here, obviously. And I think they have one other one like somewhere else in the world. New York. They have one in New York, obviously, the original, stupid. But yeah, they have one in New York, they have one in Miami, and they have one in Las Vegas, obviously. But just looking at the time here. But instead of Carbone, which I think kind of mediocre types of cuisine, but very New York, Carbone is quite New York. It's a very much a New York Italian restaurant. And I've heard their owner speak about what they're trying to accomplish with Carbone, is that we are trying to deliver like the best vodka rigatoni that you could have. That's what they want. They really want to deliver on like old school favorites like chicken parmesan or veal parmesan is what they actually do serve there. They really want to like deliver chicken parmesan. I think they do veal parmesan too. They really want to deliver on those types of cuisine. It's very like New York Italian, which I've really learned to like differentiate New York Italian and like authentic like Italian, because the replacement option, because Carbone almost impossible to get into, it helps that there's now another Carbone Riviera, which is at the Bellagio, but another option which I think is the superior option and the best Italian restaurant in Las Vegas, specifically for pasta, Mother Wolf. Mother Wolf is a much larger room, making it much easier to make a reservation for them. It also helps that they're at the Fontainebleau, which is, not the center of the strip, which usually helps. But I think that their cuisine, their price point, their room, I think it is so much better than Carbone. I love Mother Wolf. I love all their pastas. They're hand rolled. No machines are used when they make their pasta. And you can also see into the kitchen. It's really fun. It just smells delicious on the inside. Everything kind of feels like kind of a cool sort of vibe. It's not like super like dad Italian restaurant, because they hate that restaurant. Anybody who's over the age of like 60, they're like, why is Biggie playing on the speakers? We're not looking for, the mob Italian restaurant. It's much more of like an Italian style, Roman Italian cuisine, but love the pasta. Mother Wolf, as long as you reserve like a couple weeks out, it's fantastic cuisine at a very high level. And I feel like they have something to prove, which I really enjoy. They do have a restaurant that's actually in Los Angeles by chef Evan Funke. And that's actually where I had Mother Wolf for the first time. And then they blow up. They even were on Hacks because they're like, I got a reservation at Mother Wolf, which is so interesting that I was able to eat there. I don't know how I end up at these places like when they get, when they blow up, which is fun. But, or maybe like I was late and then they became like, trendy. Either way, Mother Wolf, absolutely fantastic. Easy to get a reservation. You could walk into that place and get, sit at the bar. It's fantastic. Love Mother Wolf. So those are just a couple of the options. I think, honestly, those are like really the only places in town where it is almost impossible to get a reservation for that is on the strip. One other one that I haven't been to, and I've found that it's very hard to get into that place, is Esther's Kitchen, which is in the Arts District. By the way, went to the Arts District right before this, got a little toasty. I think I'm going to have an episode on like why gentrification is actually like kind of good for some cities. Like, I know some people like hate like, oh, gentrification, like it's taking all the heart and soul out of the area. It's, you're just making it look like every place else. And I think that might be true to a point, but I think gentrification is actually, and then like, it also makes things more expensive, like apartments and housing and, property value, all that stuff. Although if you're like have property value, like in a house, like your taxes, I don't know if your taxes go up. I don't own a home, but I mean, it makes your property value in your house go up. But anyways, it makes people like me, who I get nervous in certain parts of town. I'm not going to lie. Like, I'm not like, a strong person. Like, I'm not trying to fight nobody. Like, and I get freaked out. Like, you never know about people. But you know what? Arts District, I used to drive by there when I was doing tours. And I was like, man, just try to zip past this part of the city. Who wants to get off here? Who would want to walk in this area? Now I'm like, this place is cool. Like, I want to walk up and down this street, pop in all these cool bars. It's a great place for, like, there's a new bar like popping up every like so often. Good restaurants, like really like neighborhood style restaurants that I would want to try. Really fun, like exciting chefs. Like, again, gentrification sucks, but sometimes it makes your part of the city worth going to. Like, I get excited to go down there to experience something new and see what's cool. And I think they're doing it in the right way. I think like they still keep sort of the identity of the Arts District, but make it like accessible to people. Like, a lot of people in the Arts District like try to like gatekeep it. Like, oh, you can't come. You didn't want to come here when it was gross. Yeah, I didn't. But that's for a whole nother episode. Sorry, I kind of got off on a tangent, but check it out, guys. With that being said, make sure you guys listen to our next episode. Don't know what it's going to be about because that's how I roll. But really appreciate you guys listening and rolling with the punches. I know last episode was kind of a fly by the seat of your pants one, maybe a little bit more personal. That's what my dad told me after he told me he listened to it. But I think this one was really, really fun. Hopefully this helps you on your quest for making that impossible reservation. But if you do come to Las Vegas, you might see me out in town. And remember, if you see me, come up and say hello. But remember, keep it confidential.